This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming at you Monday morning. It's October 14th after last night's Wolves-Knicks matchup at the Garden. So that's, of course, going to be the focus of this episode. The Wolves playing Cat rematch, first time, whatever we're calling it. I got Wolves beat writer Jace Frederick here with me to get into it. Jace, I'm not going to lie. I think we're maybe both in this camp. I wasn't super excited about a Sunday afternoon Wolves game that I was going to have to watch. But honestly, that game was kind of fun. It did kind of have all of the stuff, right? Yeah, the little DiVincenzo drama after the game. So Twitter's like, yes. But I also thought it was really competitive. The guys were trying. They played
It was
yeah.
and that definitely felt like one of those preseason games where like the guys really wanted to perform. Like a lot of times in the preseason, even when guys are like playing hard, it kind of looks like they're just like showing out, like a little bit, like, or just like having fun with it. But like this was like competitive in a different way than you usually get even from preseason games where guys quote unquote try hard.
I think it's the coaches, like Tibbs and Finch. Tibbs certainly has this label of like, play my guys a lot.
Yeah.
Finch is definitely like on the spectrum of Tibbs to whatever the opposite side of Tibbs is for a coaching standpoint. Like Finch is over there. We know he's played his guys. Heavy, but it's not a heavy like rest guy. And
getting
honestly,
heated at the refs.
Yeah,
from the preseason perspective. Hey, we know this. Like that was only Finch's third ever preseason loss.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, like they clearly do compete. It was a collision, and then obviously I think like the Cat trade and not just
the
Cat,
DiVincenzo. Yeah,
yes,
it just happened. Like you probably feel the way you felt after the trade.
Yeah,
and even if you're excited about your new opportunity,
clearly
like I think I think there's still a little bit of like I'm going to show you, and that'll be true in the regular season. But like this is very fresh. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all.
But I think the biggest thing to me and kind of where I want to start is with Ant. Yeah, I sent it to you in the email, but and I don't know if you felt this way, but what I put down was like, okay, yeah, this is like the first game ever for me where I was like, oh yeah, this is just an Anthony Edwards team, like where he's the guy, and then you got other players below there that kind of file in underneath him. He brought the effort. He did all the things in that game too, but it certainly could just have been the juxtaposition of playing against Cat that made that pop for me. But, for his whole career, it's kind of been, even if he was the best player on the team, it'd kind of been a Cat and Ant team. And now just having watched these 3 preseason games, spending a lot of time thinking about this team, I'm like, oh yeah, this is like clearly one of those teams that has, a guy up here and then, kind of the infantry filing in beneath that. I know that's kind of like a cliche way to talk about teams, or sports in general, but I bring it up because it's different. It seems different to me. And then, Ant played really well in that game. And he was engaged offensively. He was crafty and dynamic scoring. And I thought he guarded too. Maybe it was also just because we didn't see him play in the first preseason game in Iowa. He was kind of like, I'm in Iowa, like,
correct. This was it's on ESPN in New York. Like in Iowa, it was like, this isn't televised and we're in Iowa, like Ant was definitely like, obviously he still did some things, and like played fine in Iowa, certainly. Sure. But you're right. It was definitely a different level of player. I would push back on the whole like Ant's team thing. Like
I figured you might.
I know what you mean, but this is a player who was like 4th in the NBA in usage percentage last season. Like he was the same use, like just below Shea, Luka, Giannis. Like I know Cat was there, but I think we all very much felt like Cat stepped in line behind Ant for large parts of last season, and especially if there was a big game or anything. So like I think that already existed. I think it's possible it can go to an even higher level for sure. And like last night, I definitely think too it matters more that if Mike Conley's not playing, like then things will even go more through Ant.
They should.
And I know we're going to talk about that later as well too. But yeah, I think maybe like in Ant's head, because even I think you you or somebody else asked that on like media day, and he was basically like, yeah, I guess like I am like the leader or whatever. So like he has to take more ownership, even if he'd acted kind of as the leader in a lot of different ways in the past. Now it's like there's just no denying it in his own head. But I do feel like that's kind of been the on-court product for a while now.
Yeah,
but there's even more.
I think I'm getting into the politics. Like
Yeah.
there's just the whatever. However,
he doesn't have to pretend like it's not the case. You know, like
and that even sounds like cynical. It's just it's a feeling surrounding it. And I think to Ant's credit, he has so willingly shared it, the whole time of like there
I think
hasn't
you'd prefer to share it. I
kinda
really
agree
do.
with that. Yeah. But it's not that anymore. Whatever it was before, it's pretty clear to me it's not that anymore. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a natural progression of how future superstars progress, and I don't know. I also could just be like really pleased with what that performance looked like. It's like it's a lot of the things that I've always wanted to see more of from Ant on both sides of the ball. A commitment to taking more threes than mid-range shots. I loved him getting into a floater game for the first time ever, like literally ever.
Wild. I mean, like
little deep, little LaMelo.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, LaMelo. That's a great example of it. It was some of those. I was like, what is that? Like, is that a good shot? I don't know. But he hit him. You're right. Like he is one of those guys where like I work on this and I have full confidence in it and I want to show it. Yeah, man.
Just give me that rather than the like pump, turn, shoot, like sort of thing from
and driving into the trees where it's like you went into two guys there. Like I know you want to foul, but like guess when you go into a set defense, like that's when you're less likely to get a call. Like even if they hit your arm or not, like when there are two guys at the rim kind of waiting for you, like just versatility of like now they have to think about that floater. Now you have that option, and then like no matter how they defend you, if you have an answer for it, which obviously it seems like every year he's adding more and more answers, like the more quote unquote unstoppable you're going to be and the less stinkers you're going to have in big moments. Not that he had many, but like it was in the past, like teams load up and now things are hard. Now you don't have as good of a game, like all that stuff, like that was great to see. Like I agree with you. I think he was really good on both ends.
Just like natural off of the screen. Yeah. The float, like the getting to where he wanted to go,
right,
while playing off of his teammates, just look clean. And that we know that hasn't always been the Ant. Hasn't stopped Ant from being like really good,
right?
But like I think just the most simplest way to put it is I think he's come to realize how much of an advantage Rudy Gobert gives him when he allows him to set him a clean screen. Because Rudy's just a really good screener and really big and has the gravity when he rolls. So Ant knows when he comes off of Rudy's shoulder, like good things are going to happen. It's just going to be easier to score, easier for the team to score there. And I definitely noticed that. But the main thing was, he shot 13 threes, right? And I'm thinking about that in the Cat context. He made 8 of his 13 threes. Obviously, I don't think he's going to shoot like 7, maybe, who knows? But he shot a bunch of them, and that's been. He said at media day multiple times, like, and Finch has clearly pushed this with him, let's get that catch and shoot 3-point volume up. And just in general, right? Like this team loses gravity without Karl Anthony Towns. And the way you get gravity back in your offense is to have volume 3-point shooting of players that guys have to guard, right? And DiVincenzo's obviously that, but Ant will be that too, in so many ways. And I was just looking at it. I was like, all right, like what percentage of his threes last year were catch and shoot, and Ant took 532 threes last season and only 168 of them were catch and shoot threes. And if you compare that against Karl, who shot 327 total threes last season, 276 of his were catch and shoot for. So Karl's shooting 90% of his are catch and shoot. It's like a third of his are catch and shoot threes. And I just think
that gets into the whole like who's a better shooter type thing. And it's like, well, when you take that different level of difficulty of shots, like I don't know, if Ant took 90% of his catch and shoot threes, like what percentage would he shoot? Like
that's what I'm thinking about, man. Like it's so Ant made 41% of his catch and shoot threes last season.
Yeah.
And Karl made 42.8.
Right.
They're both 40% catch and shoot 3-point guys. And And obviously, Carl is an incredible shooter.
Yeah.
And we're not
He's in an
saying
elite
that.
class. It's just who else can be in an elite class, like.
And it's just, if all of Carl's are catch and shoots, 43% is a little bit less potent than I think we just think about when Carl has been a 40% 3-point shooter forever. Because
You don't have Mike's catch and shoot number on there, do
I
you?
do actually have it in this tab here. Holding. Mike was 42.6. Carl was 42.8. Mike was 42.6.
Right.
Carl took 276 catch and shoot threes. Mike took 197.
Mm-hmm.
Mike played more games though, so he was a higher. I mean, Carl was a higher volume catch and shoot 3-point shooter than them. But the reason I had that tab up was I was like, all right, how many guys in the league shot 100 catch and shoot threes last season and made 40% of them? You want to guess?
How many?
How many guys? That's hard.
100 and made 40%. Okay.
I'm not saying I would have got this or anywhere close, but
30.
83.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's big. That's a big number.
Big, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and Carl took 276, so 100's like low, but
100 is low. Yeah, that's true. I should have factored that in. But
that's a lot. Like, it's still 100 shots that you made 40% of. So I just really, DiVincenzo got this going for me just watching him play. Like, is just how much I don't think the Wolves will gravely miss Cat's 3-point shooting. Right. Just because you replace that and probably even more volume with DiVincenzo, but can you do that in other places as well? Like, even if we just go, okay, DiVincenzo equals Cat, we even that out, right? Well, other guys got to shoot more threes too. And I think Ant is part of that.
Not to make up for Cat, but just
to get above. They were 20th in threes last year.
Yeah, that is shooting top 10 volume at least.
And I think that's like, if Ant is more committed to this 3-point volume, especially in catch and shoots, or just like those one side dribbles, like quickly I'm getting to it, which isn't technically a catch and shoot, like that's going to help a lot. And this team, we know, like, right, like how do they get better from the 16th, 17th best offense last season to being something more? It's playing faster and shooting more threes. Like, are the two probably, or that's what Finch is saying, are the two main things to do that. And I don't think until last night I'd been thinking about how much Ant could be a big part of the answer there, along with, I mean, they had 5 guys last season who shot 100 catch and shoot threes and made 40% of them: Ant, Cat, Nas, Nikhil, and Mike. So you lose, you lose Cat, and you bring DiVincenzo in. He shot the most catch and shoot threes in the NBA last season. But like, I think they have a volume of these guys who can do it, and I'm expecting this team to be lights out from 3 and to shoot a lot more of them still, even after losing Karl-Anthony Towns, that's unique.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I do think just being around like a DiVincenzo will just make Ant like, oh, I should never hesitate on anything like this, like, and even the quality of 3 and like what a good 3 looks like, because Dante can see it right now. Like, if he's like, oh, you let me have like a foot of breathing room, like, I'm pulling this, like, I know this is a good shot. I know I'm a great shooter. Like, I can't believe you let me get this look off. So when Ant plays with somebody like that, I think it is naturally going to boost his volume of like, these are good shots. These are the shots we take. I'm going to look for this shot.
Right.
Where I don't think, when you play on a lower volume team, even like an Ant is going to like, these aren't the shots we take. I really do think that like Ant, as much as he's the best player, like, and he sets a tone in terms of like aggressiveness and whatnot, like, I don't think he's always going to be the guy like who's going to determine the style of play, where those around him might. And I just think that Dante taking more threes, I really think is going to have everybody being more comfortable being like, these are the shots we take. This is the kind of offense we are. Like Dante, like the thing with him, like the exaggeration of the spacing is like unbelievable. Like you do just see like, and Cat had this too, but he just didn't. It was like top of the floor. It wasn't even the same thing. Like Dante is like on the wing and he's 30 feet away from the basket.
Yeah.
And his defender is 2 feet away from him because you have to be.
I mean, like, that's an angle, right? So that's Pythagorean theorem, this thing, right? Like that's more space.
And consider putting Ant like there. So like that is now Dante is so far out on that wing that like Ant in the middle of a game in regular season could drive left if Dante is to his left, because he is so far out that there's still plenty of room there. And if you take that one step in, like, guess what? Then that's the easiest, pass out open Dante 30-footer that he feels like he's going to make, you know, like I do think just like you see when you use like the full width of the court, it gets pretty big, and all of a sudden it is hard for things to be like congested. Like that right now, I think last night I looked and Dante and Ant's offensive rating just from the last game was like a 126 from like last night. And obviously before that, Dante's from the Lakers game was absurd. I haven't looked at the Iowa one. I'm sure that was incredibly good too. Like it is like they're stacking. And I know Finch has said, hey, we were pretty good offensively in the preseason last year too, but like these numbers are like gaudy. And I don't know.
The eye test too.
Yeah, it does. It looks good. The numbers say it's really good. I think there would have to be a pretty steep difference in like drop off a play or stylistic change for this offense not to be good. And I know like everybody's gonna be like, well, Julius Randle hasn't played yet. We won't have the exact same spacing or whatever, but remember, this is the way everybody's playing. So I don't know, like to not see Julius fall in line with it too to some degree would be kind of baffling.
Well, we talked about Randle last week when you were on, and you'd written the article about Randle playing with the Pelicans under Finch as kind of the offensive coordinator there, and I said I'd went and watched a bunch of those clips, and the spacing is what stood out most about that Pelicans team to me. Like, what again? If people didn't listen last week, what I said was like Julius Randle kind of looked like Julius Randle in New York to me when I watched him on the Pelicans, but what looked different was the floor complexion for that Pelicans team, and Randle kind of, I think, broke out and was able to do Julius Randle things because the other four players around him were committed to giving him space to do those things. And yes, we're going to talk about that later a little bit too, about integrating Randle. But if you have concerns about Julius Randle integrating into the Wolves, which I think a lot of people do, and I get that, you have to counterbalance some of that with the notion that we've seen, granted it's preseason, but also just what we've heard throughout training camp is this commitment to space that this team is going to have. And I think like that increases my encouragement that this is going to be okay with Julius Randle, particularly because of the Ant 3-point shooting stuff that I'm talking about here. Because the only thing that concerns me about Julius Randle and spacing and the Wolves figuring out this offense is if it's sticky and bogs down with both Ant and Julius on the floor together. Well, if Ant's a little bit more committed to being a spacer and a decisive perimeter-oriented player, I think that's going to help Julius too. Now, I think we're going to for sure run into issues with that, but I feel better about it today than I did 2.5 weeks ago when I'm just sitting there and I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, oh, the Wolves traded Cat for Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle. Like, it seems cleaner in my head now than it did before.
And I would say like this is true for everything with Ant. Like you see the floater last night that we talked about, you know, like he's like, oh, I worked on this. Look at this. Like, look at what I can do. Like he loves like showing off the things he can do. And the fact that that catch and shoot was like something that he really worked on this offseason. Like I do think that's going to be in his head even in the regular season of like, I'm gonna go stand over here and everybody can see how good I can catch and shoot, you know, like, and if that is the case for Minnesota, like when we even saw in Iowa, like he got on a roll of just a couple catch and shoot jumpers and just knocked them down. Like, and especially when he's on the court with like Mike, where it's easier to generate those types of things. Like if he's excited about it, and that then really kind of makes him just another piece of what they're doing, but like the biggest threat ever for catch and shoot, like that, just spacing and movement too. Like, I think that just increases the buy-in likelihood even in the regular season when like if he's excited about being a part of that because he wants to be on the end result of it.
I think that's a great thing to point out, that you know from having been around Ant for 4 or 5 years now, right? Of just like he does lean into the things that he wants to show are new. We've seen that over and over again, and hopefully, you know, like what like that is for the Wolves, that is one of the things that he does lean into this season. Let's grab our first break here. I want to let you all know that Wolves Fest is this coming Saturday at Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. We've been doing this for the past couple years at Falling Knife, where we kind of have a Saturday brewery Wolves themed event at Falling Knife. They're gonna have like different Wolves themed vendors and stuff. They're at Falling Knife, and then Britt and I will do a live podcast at 5:00. We'll take a bunch of questions from those of you. Again, it's Saturday right before the first game on Tuesday, so we'll have the preseason done. I think it'll be a fun episode, fun way to just kind of finalize our thoughts on the preseason. We'd love to just hang out with all of you there at Falling Knife. That is, again, this Saturday from 3 to 7 p.m. I mean, even probably later into the night then, but I'm gonna get there at like 3 o'clock and hang out and set up and have a Wolves Brewery Saturday at Falling Knife. So put that on your radar. We'd love to have a bunch of Wolves fans be there. Today's show is also brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. If you do have home improvement needs that you're trying to get taken care of this fall or winter, we would love for you to consider using Your Home Improvement Company. They have a deal going on right now where you buy 2 windows, you get 2 free on triple pane windows. If windows are something you need, they also have a 30% off deal on all bathroom remodels this month. So if those are things you want to get done, jump on that now if you want to get a deal. But really, any home improvement project, we would love if you considered Your Home Improvement Company. You can contact them by calling 866-777-YHIC, or you can just go to yourhomeimprovementco.com. They have great financing, great deals, 0 money down, 0 interest, and 0 payments until 2026 on any home improvement project. Again, that's 866-777-YHIC, or go to yourhomeimprovementco.com. It's Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. Jace, I thought another thing that I just put down kind of in the notes right away once we saw that Mike Conley wasn't going to play in this game was like, all right, we're gonna get 48 minutes of whatever else there is at point guard on this team. And we've obviously been talking about this a lot, going back to July or whatever, when Monte Morris and Jordan McLaughlin left, and it was clear that the point guard depth was true point guard depth was Mike Conley, who's 37, and Rob Dillingham, who's 19. And they certainly have other types of handlers on this team, not pure point guards, but they had to play the whole game last night. Well, at least without Mike. Dillingham played, and he ran the point often.
And he's not a pure point guard either, right? He's just not.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to. Yeah, but he's the most of the group of like him.
Good playmaker for sure. Good passer. Like you just know, like when you watch play, it's like not a pure point guard. He's a scoring point guard, and that's fine. Like that is a great trait to have. Like
just
you
different
an
than
all-star
Mike.
being a scoring point guard. Yeah, there are just only so many players like Mike in the NBA. There are only so many good players like Mike in the NBA, frankly. Like the other guys who you're like, that's a pure point guard, you'd be like, but you don't want them playing more than 15 minutes. Mike, that's what makes Mike a rare and dying breed, frankly, is the true point guard who's a really good player.
Totally. And they're just gonna only get that true point guard play from 28, 30 minutes a night in the games that Conley does play, which is going to leave, I don't know, like maybe half the minutes this season are going to be without Mike Conley on the floor. And what are they going to do to best, capitalize on that? I think in the first quarter, like they were really grabbing defensive rebounds, getting out and going, and, just playing with a little bit of that semi-transition pace. And you were like, okay, whatever, like this is fine. It's just, we've seen it the last couple of games, and I think Alexander Walker is kind of the one that pops in my mind where it's been like slowed down. He's at the top of the key and he gets ripped, and he go the other way. That happened against the Sixers. It happened one time last night against the Knicks. OG Anunoby ripped him. Like that's, OG's as good as it gets there. But I think like Nikhil is of the others is the most point guardy of those guys, but he's not really point guardy himself either. Britt and I kind of talked about this on Friday after that Iowa game, but I don't know. This is just, I don't know if it's something I'm super concerned about, but it's something that certainly needs to get figured out. And I don't really know what the answer is.
Did you talk about Nikhil with Britt on Friday? What did you guys?
Yeah, we
I haven't listened to that one yet.
No, we talked about we talked about Nikhil and Rob kind of struggling, and a lot of people push back on the idea that Rob
I saw your tweet, and one thing I'd say about that. I know you probably I don't want to keep diving into this, but you started a question to Finch of Rob struggled a little bit tonight, and Finch goes, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was his first answer was, yeah, I listened back to it. Like the
Mhm.
coach said it. Like,
And that's
you know,
I mean,
like
that's kind of my process. I think both of our
right,
processes,
right,
this is
yes.
like,
Sometimes we test our theories, like, and if it gets rejected, we're like, I don't know if that's right.
I
Maybe
mean,
it still is. I'll think
that's
about it. But
literally what I
yeah,
do in my Google Doc for every single game is I like put, I'm thinking about what I'm doing for the show the
yeah,
next day, and I'm putting down things that are potential things to talk about that are my takeaways, and then I try to put them through the filter of, we talked to Finch after the game.
yeah,
Okay, does that affirm or deny what I put down?
right,
Same, particularly the like, I mean, Mike is great for
yeah,
me for that. Mike Conley, asking him about stuff that like stood out to me, and
yeah,
what's happened tons of times in my career is I put a line through stuff. I'm like, oh, nope, I
mm-hmm.
just didn't know that that's what you were trying to do.
Right.
But I do feel empowered to roll with what my initial take was when that has been stamped by Finch, as that was
Yeah.
in that case. But that's not what you asked.
Yes,
You're
correct.
talking about
Nikhil specifically, I'm a little concerned about, like, you know, from every interview he's done, he's talked about, I want to alleviate Mike. I want to like take over more of those duties. And I'm like, that's not the player you are. And I think we've seen in the NBA, like, you can't make yourself into a floor general. Like, if that's not your skill set, just be who you are. Look a little bit like 10% more like playmaking. But right now, he just looks like every time he's in the point guard role, he's like, I need to be Mike Conley here. And that's not the type of player you are. Be more willing to like be aggressive yourself. Like you're you're like a good player who can get to the rim and whatnot, but like play into your own strengths, because if you try to be somebody else, you're going to be a worse version of yourself. And it's not like he's been like terrible, but that's kind of been what I've seen, is like he's currently being a worse version of himself because he's trying to be somebody that he's not. And that, I think that's a little bit of a concern. And you don't really want anybody to fall into that role when Mike isn't on the floor or whatever, because I think you can survive minutes where he's not out there. If everybody's just like keeping a ball movement mindset, player movement mindset, let's just get it moving. Let's just get off of it and go from there. Like you can play good offense. It's when there's 5 minutes left that we like, okay, now you need Mike out there to set something up. Like you don't
and he will
need
be.
that for the exactly, for the other parts of the game. So don't try to be that. That's what I'm seeing from Nikhil right now. That is a little bit concerning, of like, don't fall into that trap, I would say.
Well, I think what's a little bit concerning, at least how going historically with Nikhil, as I understand it, obviously I wasn't watching every Nikhil Alexander Walker game before he was on the Timberwolves.
Jazz,
but again, as I understand it, he came in kind of being asked to do exactly this, like be a combo guard, but lean a little bit more into point guarding, and that was a struggle, and he was ineffective in that role early in his career, and it seems as a product of that derailed some of his confidence, that he then had to build back up in a different role for the Timberwolves. That was not really being, I mean, especially that first year, like he wasn't really like a point guard at all. He was like a 2-3
right
on that team, right? Like he didn't and they gave him a little bit more handling stuff last year. And I think he was really like basic with it and honestly kind of effective.
Perfect. Yeah.
And now it's there just is, without Kyle Anderson, Monte Morris, and Jordan McLaughlin on the team, there's a little bit more where they're like, actually, hey, Nikhil, we do need you to maybe be the Pelicans, whatever that version from before. And I get the idea of, he's like, all right, I like established this strong skill set. What skills can I stack on top of it? It's only a couple preseason games, but that's like the Jenga tower that like some of the pieces are like,
little wobbly,
So
the thing though, but when you ask like Mike about Nikhil, when you ask Finch about Nikhil, they are all like, but we still want to keep it simple for him, like so as much as like, I think it's like, it'd be great if he could take on some of these backup point guard minutes. I don't think it's too much like go out there and be the table setter, like, I think it's like, let's just like play simple basketball here, where I think so often he is like, okay, what do I get us into now? Blah, blah, blah. And then you're overthinking it and you're doing things slowly because you're trying to figure out what's best here, like, and I understand that if you're even trying to get 10% more into that, there's going to be a feeling out process, because he hasn't really done that, at least for a long time. So maybe it will look rough in the beginning, and maybe that will pay off in December and January, whatever. But right now, I think it's just a little bit of a cautionary thing of like, you can still be like an aggressive offensive player yourself and just be simple getting off of it, and then go find a wing, like, and play from there. Because I just don't think it's super necessary, especially when he's out there and he's got like 3 other wings out there or whatever, like, or 2 other like really good secondary playmakers. Like, it's fine. I think Dante has done the best job of just like, I'm just going to dribble it up and get off of it, or
Yeah.
whatever, like we're just gonna
That's
run
what
up
they're
and
on,
get
like
going.
pistol.
Yeah.
Like let's go. Let's get into it and start moving our bodies and the ball. That I think that is the right thing for if it is Nikhil to be doing it, if it is Dante to be doing it. It's kind of like I know Josh Minot, and I've said like I'm impressed. Like, and I think he's maybe part of this rotation on the fringe, but part of me thinks Finch might lean on Ingles a little bit until this whatever we're talking about right here, the backup point guard or secondary initiator stuff is being ironed out. I just not that Joe's a pure point guard either, but he's played this exact combo sort of point forward, kind of like Kyle Anderson last year. Like he's done that throughout his career. I think in Orlando it got him in trouble. They leaned into that a little bit too much because that Magic team was super thin on point guards as well. And as a product of that, Ingles had a super high turnover rate last season. But I think Ingles wasn't just brought in to be a guy who has experience with Conley and Gobert, a guy who's been a great 3-point shooter. I think part of it was like, we need a little bit of that Kyle Anderson. And I'm not saying we've seen that a ton in the preseason from him, but I think that's a skill set now. I would anticipate we see him because of that in the rotation night one is my guess.
Yeah, I don't disagree that was definitely probably the plan when they brought him in, but like just adding DiVincenzo to the whole thing, like obviously alongside Randle, just like it is, I don't know. I really don't know where they're going to go minutes wise when you map it out, because I just don't like, it's like, where are Joe's minutes coming from? Is Rob not playing then? Like all of these other things, like, and I don't anticipate Rob playing much, but I think he'll get out there. But if Ingles is playing some, that I don't know if there are minutes for Rob. And I know Finch has talked about going 10 deep, but the thing is, when your top 8 is so strong, like how many minutes of those guys are you going to cut out, because there's a firm belief in those 8 guys. So if everybody's healthy and ready to roll, maybe Randle won't have a full minute load by then. He hasn't played yet, obviously. There doesn't seem to be a big concern there, but maybe they're like, hey, we'll start him at 24. And now there are a few more minutes to play with.
Right.
But yeah, I'm going to be super
intrigued. You're saying Randle 24?
Yeah, maybe just if they're working him back, just because he hasn't played one yet. So like maybe they start out with something lower. I don't know that. It's just now that we keep
hadn't really thought about that,
not playing. We're only 8 days away now. So a guy who still hasn't even played a preseason game yet. Now, if he plays in Chicago and plays 24 minutes there, I'd be like, nope, okay, I think he'll be fine for the regular season. But yeah, I'm gonna be fascinated in that Laker game, not even just of the result, how it looks, whatever, like who plays and how many minutes do they play? Because it is a difficult pie to cut up right now. Like,
position do they play?
You like Josh Minot. I have no idea where his minutes would come from. He's looked great. He's looked great. Like he looks like somebody who has to play, but I don't know where those minutes come from.
I agree.
Like Rob, they were like draft night. They're like, yep, we're committed to playing Rob. I don't know how many minutes are there. Joe, I agree. I think like that's somebody that they would love to lean on for that role, like in some second unit point guard minutes. Like, don't know where those minutes come from. It's
the 240 game, right?
Like, yeah, it's the 240. Like anybody listening, like go ahead, like and get a piece of paper out or whatever, like and do it as a fun exercise and figure out where these are coming from. Because I can make it 10 different ways right now, and I don't know which direction they would go.
I'm with you. Let's keep running. I have a couple more things here, but I want to rip through them. They played Cat. We should talk about that a little bit. I think like the most interesting they played Cat or watching Cat play for the Knicks is what does Cat look like playing for the Knicks? More so than going up against his buddies or whatever. I don't really know how to talk about that. He went up against his buddies, and I'm sure that was weird. It was weird to watch. I don't have much analysis beyond that, though.
Pretty funny of like the drama, things like that or whatever. Like Dante did kind of steal all the thunder of that.
Totally.
Like, it was like Cat's playing against the Wolves, and it very quickly turned into Dante's playing against the Knicks.
No, that's totally that is what absolutely happened last night. I watched the Knicks the first half of the first 2 Knicks preseason games, just kind of out of curiosity of what Cat looks like. And what's interesting to me about that is what I was saying about Ant is Ant's doing a lot of the things that I hope that Ant will do more of, or have wanted Ant to do more of for a while. And that's been my take with watching Carl as well in New York. The version of the player he's playing at for the Knicks, and more perimeter orientation, more aggressive getting to his 3-point shot. playing out of the pinch post area there. Like some of the things that I always wanted to see a little bit more of from Cat. Or not always, the last couple of years I wanted to see a little bit more of, because I thought those were, having covered him most of his career, like those were the best things. Like, why isn't there more of that? And I think what my just basic take right now is it might just be easier to get him to play that better version of himself, or my opinion of a better version of himself, when he's just playing the 5,
Mm-hmm.
and that exclusively the 5, which I don't know, maybe Mitchell Robinson comes back at some point and they get him back into his go next to Gobert 4 role. But I know Carl hasn't shot well in the preseason thus far, but I like the version of, I think it's good for Cat to be a little bit more aggressive getting into a shot. That he missed it, but like Rudy's out there playing up on him, and Carl just gets into a one dribble step back, and it's like, here you go, I'm guarded by 7'2" guy, but that one like dribble like gets Rudy to take a step back, and then Carl takes a step back, and that's a clean 3. I think provided Carl stays confident in playing that way, and is maybe even cool with his 3-point percentage being like 37% rather than 41. I think that's it. I think that's a good thing for the Knicks. So I don't really know how Knicks fans exactly are thinking about this thus far. I would just say it's encouraging to me that Carl is playing a different version of offense than he was in Minnesota these past 2 years, because I think just his role held him back a little bit offensively from, what he could do. That's really all I got on Cat.
Yeah, I agree. And I still think even these last 2 years, you can go back to stretches. I think I'd tweet about it like every time. If there would be like a second quarter shift where Rudy wouldn't be on the court and Carl would be guarded by a traditional center, Carl would be that player. He just was that player. Like he would see the matchup and his eyes would light up, and he would know, okay, if I catch the ball out here and this guy isn't comfortable being within 3 feet of me, then I'm just going to fire away, that's when he would comfortably do that. And then the guy would step up and then Carl would blow by. Like that is where just like your bigs, like you're kind of slow footed big doesn't have an answer for Carl. And Carl is going to get that matchup now so much more frequently, so many more minutes, like a Jonas Valanciunas is going to have to guard Carl, because there's nowhere else on the court for him to guard. And that for Carl was easy offense before Rudy got here. It was easy offense when Rudy was out of a game. And Carl didn't really hesitate. You literally saw like those switches. I don't know if it's like this guy's guarding me before I know what it is, or just looks at the size and he's like, it's my time right now. But I very frequently saw him be like, okay, this is me. I know what to do here. Because Carl, when he had 4 feet between him and his defender, would not hesitate on threes. That 3-point volume, a lot of times he's guarded by a power forward, a little more mobile guy who would actually get up into him, and be like, I'm going to play up on you, and you're gonna have to drive through me playing up on you, because I'm not gonna let you take these 3-point shots. But the matchups he's gonna see on a night-to-night basis are not going to have, some teams will, but a lot of them will be not the mobility to be brave enough, and frankly wouldn't be smart to get right up on him, because then he will blow by you if you are one of those really big traditional centers that a lot of teams still start at the 5.
True.
So just getting back to the 5 and getting that matchup is going to be, I think, huge for his offensive game, and just the nights where he just okay, I know I can take over here.
He did literally play against Jonas Valanciunas in their previous preseason game, and there's literally a possession, or it's like sideline out of bounds. I don't know, went out of bounds on the Wizards, and it's on the Knicks basket side, and it's just sideline out of bounds. And Carl's just at the top of the key, and Bridges or whoever is inbounding it, and Carl just waves at him like this, and he just Bridges just throws it to Carl 28 feet for the basket, and Carl just one dribble blows by Valanciunas for that classic Cat runner where he gets fouled once he gets to the block, and it's an and one, and he falls over. Carl does have that and knows he can kill that. Carl can kill that. And there's going to be more of those opportunities, and his awareness of those moments is going to only go up, which I think in turn is going to make him a more effective and efficient version of himself offensively. Now, there's going to be a lot of other factors that play into what, I'm not saying Carl's going to come out the first 20 games of the season and it's going to be like that one year where he was shooting 10 threes. We're like, this is the best offensive 5 in the NBA. But because I just think there's going to be an acclimation process to playing with all these, new players. I think there's going to be an emotional toll of playing in New York and all that sort of stuff. But I think they know what the best version of Carl can be. Carl's been that version of himself before, and it's just for them is like, what percentage of the time can we get that? And I feel confident that they're going to get that more than the Wolves have the previous 2 seasons.
I totally agree. And I think it really is just kind of it's going to be a matchup type of thing. And here's what I would predict, like in certain matchups and like in the playoffs, if like lineups stay the same and like Mitchell Robinson isn't in the starting lineup or whatever, like teams will start putting their center on Josh Hart. And Josh Hart might make them pay for that. Like he certainly is capable of like figuring out different ways, but that's going to happen. That's going to happen. It won't happen every night in the regular season. As you and I know, like it's almost frustratingly so. And this is not the Timberwolves. That's why I like watching the Timberwolves on a nightly basis. They will actually make a defensive game plan for the opponent. A lot of teams are just like, what? It's our 5 versus your 5. We don't think anything more about it than that. But like that won't be the case against better teams. And in the playoffs, like teams will make adjustments like that. And then it's like, where do you go from there? Because now Carl's back to being guarded by somebody who can play tight and won't get blown by, those types of things, where just the easy instant offense isn't available. Carl can still obviously find different ways to score.
You and I talked about in Iowa a little bit about like just the general idea of what's this going to look like when Randle gets reintegrated into the mix here. And I think you referenced to me, and then Finch brought it up in his post-game presser, actually, of how, they've had good preseasons before where they were, where they moved the ball a bunch, and then come the regular season that kind of dried up. But specifically what you referenced to me was that first Cat and Rudy year, where I think the Wolves won their first 4 preseason games, and they looked awesome, and they were moving the ball, and the offense had all those numbers you were talking about with DiVincenzo. And then Cat and Rudy played in the final preseason game against the Nets, who played small. And it was the first game that Cat and Rudy both played in that preseason. And
that was KD, Simmons, and Irving.
Yeah, it was. It was the last days of the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, it's probably the best. I was like, actually, this could be a good team. Yeah.
I kind of did think that after that game. But it like,
they annihilated Minnesota. Like they ran them off the floor.
Totally. And it just highlighted the concerns that you would have of that happening, right? Of what it would look like once you put it all together on the floor. Obviously, the Wolves kind of like eventually found that out. And actually pretty early before Carl got hurt that first season. Like we did see a good, like, at least in the half court offensively, Cat and Rudy.
Some good stuff. Yeah.
Chemistry.
They certainly hadn't gotten there.
No.
I think in the middle, when Cat got hurt, they were in the midst of getting blown out by the Wizards.
Well, that was because that was transition. That was the issue that they did not figure out that year, was they were getting run off. But I do think it's somewhat analogous to this Randle situation, right? Like, because the question brought up before is like, what does this look like when it's Ant and Randle out there at the same time? And it's looked good offensively these 3 games that we've seen without Randle. And I actually, if Randle plays on Wednesday against Chicago, I feel pretty confident it's going to look good in the minutes where Randle is out there without Ant. I'm just curious to see what it looks like when they're both out there together. There's going to be some natural, rough edges to that, and how rough are they is going to really determine what the first, at least the first chunk of the season is. I think Finch is a good coach. I think Ant and Randle are smart enough to understand that they are going to need to effectively coexist, but I don't know. I don't know exactly what this is going to look like. And I guess alternatively, not necessarily my assumption, if it does look pretty good and it does look pretty clean with Ant and Randle in these final preseason games or the first couple regular season ones, I will really note that as an encouraging positive, because it's just not my assumption that it's going to be clean from day one.
It's like the death of like good ball movement is what every coach and player describes as like your turn, my turn basketball. And that is a 2-party thing. Like it takes 2 to tango on that. There needs to be another person who's saying, now it's my turn. You've had your turn. And like I've always said, like you can run really good offense with 1 ball stopper.
Sure.
Because eventually they'll get off of it, or whatever, and they know it'll come back, like those types of things. They'll be more willing, and then you can handle the few possessions where they just do it, where they just go ISO. We even saw that in Iowa, wherever, like last night, whatever. Ant's going to have those possessions. Everybody can live with that. It's when there's 2 guys out there, and this would sometimes happen with Cat and Ant. It could easily happen with Randle and Ant. I think that's maybe the concern is like Julius Randle maybe has an isolation possession. Maybe he has 2. Now Ant's thinking, I barely touched the ball. So the next time he gets the ball, you think he's going to be like, all right, let's get it moving. He's going to be like, I haven't touched the ball. Like it's probably time for me to put my imprint on this.
Well, that's
And now I'm
exactly
gonna
the
do
type of thinking you need to
exactly
untangle.
And that is where, like, right now Ant's doing a great job moving the ball. Everybody else is too. So it's just like if you just sprinkle in a little bit more isolation from another player while Ant's out on the court, like then you do kind of fall back into your traps of that, I guess. And that's where it can kind of go awry offensively when you have two ball stoppers and they are like not tanking because you can still get good looks out of isolation, but disrupting the flow. And then they're taking turns doing so that the flow is never really established. That is where it can get a little bit tricky, and where, there'll be times in each game where one or the other needs to be like, okay, that guy was rolling there, but now we got to just like, let's get it back into movement. And I need to be a part of getting it back into movement here.
I've referenced this a couple times. I think you've been the person asking DiVincenzo these questions about the offense and how it, like, ball movement versus isolation. And I think it's been interesting how DiVincenzo, like seemingly the quintessential ball and body mover, has been like, no, it's actually important that we have that other gear too. There's a real weapon of having, a more directed offense that goes through Randle or goes through Edwards situationally. And he's referenced the because in the playoffs, that's just needed. And I think I want to keep that in my mind throughout the season during the times when it is rough between those two. And it does seem ball stopping and the movement isn't there, to remember that this is about like a greater goal of developing this come the spring, to having it like cleaned and ready to go come the spring when they're going to need that probably in the playoffs. I think they want to keep the main thing, but that ability to sort of switch gears. It reminds me of when, and this didn't work, but when they talked about toggling defensive coverages.
Yeah, same.
When Rudy was at the 5 versus when Cat was, being back in a deep drop versus having Cat come up and play aggressive, because they're like, well, it's kind of cool to have both different gears, and that is hard to play against offensively, I would imagine. But it just, for the surrounding players, and I remember we would talk to the other players and they'd be like, yeah, I would like Cat would check in and I'd forget that we're in something different for the first visit. Remember how many guys would say that?
And it'd be like, okay, you've been doing this, and now we need you to sprint around the court and play entirely different. Where like you're just like, you've just been kind of used to just like being in your spot, like, and now it's like, and now do something totally different, in the middle of the game because someone just subbed in and out. Not even like a timeout to discuss it, like.
And I think this offensive thing that we're talking about is a little bit less different.
Not as drastic, right?
And it's a different side of the ball, and there's some apples and oranges to there, but it is like, all right, let's go from being like a team that moves it as much as anybody to a team that like relies on isolation scoring. Those are still pretty polarizing things, and it's just the greatest curiosity I have with this team right now. And mostly because we've seen none of it. And I don't know that much about, Julius Randle at a technical level, that I'm fascinated to see it. And I hope I'm hopeful we see that on Wednesday.
I think one thing that will help, because even like I was kind of reminding myself this, like in like the Iowa game, just because we were there and I was thinking about every possession basically, is like there were times where they would kind of get in a little bit of a flow, and then it would get to Ant, and then he would dribble it out, like, and then it would kind of go a little bit of isolation, and I was like, well, it kind of disrupted it. But as I'd watch, like, still was like a driving kick, open 3, like it's still a good position. A lot of teams would kill for that. Like that was a great look.
They
like
just missed the 3 or whatever.
In that very game, Philly would have been like, wow, that was our best possession of the game. Like. So it's like you could still get good looks out of it, and the thing has always been like when somebody would like miss a driving kick 3. I've always had this thought because players would describe it. Like Mike Conley would describe it to you. Like it's very hard to just sit there and watch basketball from the corner for 21 seconds and then catch and shoot, like, and it's like, well, it's a lot easier when the ball's popping around and you're kind of more prepared for it. You're ready. The ball is coming, and it's going to find you and you're ready to shoot. Like Chris Finch will talk about that. Everybody will talk about that. Like when the ball is like going around the horn, it's easier to shoot than when you're just standing and waiting and being like, I don't know if I'm going to get a kick out here or not.
Yeah.
But Dante DiVincenzo is actually good at both. And we've seen that, and he's comfortable playing with both. And he's done that. And he's done that alongside Randall. He's done that alongside Brunson, and he shot a really good percentage just standing there and waiting to catch the ball. Like he will now be the best finisher of those Ant driving kicks. Where like, you'd see Ant driving kick to Jaden and it just wasn't great last year, the finishing percentage on that. So I think just
it'll be like when somebody else drove and kicked last year to Ant against a shifted defense, and Ant is just like, all right, I just got one guy to beat here.
Yeah, right.
And Ant can beat one guy, against a shifted defense almost every time. Randle can beat one guy against a shifted defense almost every time. Like, I do think we've watered down.
Nas is pretty good at that as well.
Nas is too, but like Randle is strong.
Yeah.
Like, and he's not going to like necessarily first step get that guy like Ant will, but he's going to get a first step and then move you like through that with his physicality. And yeah, if Randle can have the discipline to stay wide while Ant is, coming off of a from the opposite side of the floor screen from Rudy and then play off of that, like I think Randle should be able to cook out of that.
Right.
I just again haven't seen Julius Randle, do that enough. And my understanding is he's just always been so much more of the primary on every team that he's been on than what this is asking him to be as a secondary. But it's noteworthy that Finch has convinced Ant to play that way and has always maintained that that's the best version you get of Ant is when you get him off of a kick against a shifted defense, and he's going to hammer that home with Julius Randle too. And that gives me, that's what it looks like once this starts working. I think I don't know when it's going to start working.
Yeah. And I didn't think like in general, like isolation basketball will look better when Ant drives and kicks and DiVincenzo just knocks down the corner three.
Yeah.
Like it will look better than like kicking to somebody who just didn't make it,
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, that wasn't a great possession. The ball didn't move. And when it finishes with good results, you'll be like, well, I guess that'll work a lot, like, so that I think has been a little bit of an epiphany of like, obviously they want probably 70 to 80% of flow basketball with the other 20% mixed in, but you just, I think you see the pieces now where isolation will even maybe be more successful than it has been in the past.
Last thing I want to hit on, Jaden McDaniels got in foul trouble last night. 3 fouls in the first 3 minutes. Obviously, this has been as great of a defender as Jaden is. That's been the nitpick, right? Is his fouling frequency. So, a little bit discouraging to see him not have that control to not pick up 3 fouls in the first 3 minutes. Ends up, finishing the game with 5 fouls in 18 total minutes. And we know that dysregulates his team because I don't want to say Jaden is the primary defensive regulator because that's Rudy, but like that's what makes this defense special is you have a point of attack regulator when Jaden's out there and you have a rim protector regulator defensively. And it sort of discombobulates when Jaden it's like, all right, we're 4 minutes into the game. Okay, Nikhil, now you're checking it. That's what happened last night. Like now, Nikhil, you're in at the 9-minute mark when you normally come in at the 3-minute mark. And then
that matters to guys too a lot.
It does. And it just, I overanalyze the rotations and stuff, but like, I've just noted that it just, in my mind, it just seems like they're chasing it the rest of the game. Whenever that happens, and a way to not chase it, because I think the fouls are going to still happen because Jaden is just,
he did a better job last year in the second half of the year, but I agree.
Sure.
He will have nights in the regular season where it's like, nope, like we are in this weird, we have to find a new rotation tonight.
And that's the question is like, what when that happens, can they go to, or can they do, or who can they lean on in those times? Because I do think it's going to be 15, 20 games a year where you're battling some version of serious Jaden McDaniels foul trouble. And this is a little bit of a release valve to the 10-man rotation idea.
Yeah.
Of like, it opens up, 15 more minutes. Those, I mean, Jaden normally gonna play 33, played 18 last night because in foul trouble.
Probably would have played more.
Yeah, you're right. It was because it was 3 quarters.
Would have probably got 24. Yeah.
There's still something there. And I'm wondering who you think what they go to in those times. Is that a Josh Minot, situation? Is that just
Nikhil plays 33,
Nikhil and Dante do?
Yeah.
Is it? I think some people would say like, oh, Minot because he's playing so well, but there is a real depth of other point of attack defenders on this team now in Nikhil or Dante. And even what they went to last night was they put Ant on Jalen Brunson.
Yep.
In that whole second quarter, he's doing his over the head claps and he's picking him up full court.
I know.
Oh man. But like, so maybe that's the answer, right? If you fill that up with the mixture, maybe Ant is just the answer there.
I think it kind of comes down to the matchup, right? Like Jalen Brunson, I think they feel like Ant makes a lot of sense for Jalen Brunson. Like he can't use his body against Ant. That's not going to work, you know.
Right.
Like, and then there are some matchups where you'd be like, well, Ant's probably not going to be the best cover for that. Nikhil is, and I think then whatever the answer is, like on who the primary scorer is that Jaden now can't cover. I think it often will be like a little bit of Dante they can sprinkle in, but I do think it'll be like, okay, now do we have Ant guard this guy or do we have Nikhil? If the answer is Ant, then I think you have a bigger window of like, so then how do we want to play the rest of this rotation? Where if the answer is Nikhil, it's like, well, that means Nikhil is on the floor. And obviously Ant's still on the floor. So I think it might be a little matchup dependent. Like, I think you can get a little funky with it. Maybe if it is Ant, maybe you can go more Josh. You can throw Josh Minot in the game. So I think that kind of matters who it is. Where like, but because there definitely are some guys where I'd be like, Ant should cover that guy or Nikhil should cover that guy. And it's kind of clear when the game's playing out, but ahead of time, you won't know because you won't know if Jaden is going to be in foul trouble that night.
I think part of the wrinkle might be, I'm just kind of thinking about this off the top of my head. Like, who's Randle guarding? Just like in general for this team. Like, you take like the Sixers. There's a lot of teams. There's a lot of like Paul Georges out there who like start at the 4 now.
Yeah.
Right. Is Randle going to kind of get the Josh Hart, Caleb Martin, like the guy who, is he just going to get the easiest defensive matchup or the guy who can't really shoot? Is that how they handle this? I don't know, because how many teams start a real like?
Yeah, and there aren't too many teams where you want Rudy to be the free safety. You know, like the Jokic type thing. There just aren't that many teams where that has to be like where that's something where.
And I just don't know enough how good Randle is. At like, okay, let's put Randle on the 5.
Yeah, right. But, you know, Randle can guard more 5s if Rudy's free safetying. That's just an easier proposition at that point.
True.
But you're right. Like, I think there will be a lot of nights where Julius just gets the easiest guy.
Yeah,
if it's a small power forward, like if it is like if it's a power forward where you're like, but we actually want Jaden to guard that guy, he's their best scorer or whatever. Then Julius
Paul Georges.
Julius Randle's just going to get. Where's the wing that we're not worried about Julius getting burned by? Even if you're not like a terrible defender, being like, okay, this guy is going to be quicker than you, but no, we're not worried about him scoring 20 points tonight.
Yeah, and I don't even know if Jaden is the one who's going to guard those dynamic like 4s, like Paul George.
I mean, Ant should guard Paul George. I mean,
yeah. That's why I wanted to
physicality gets more
because you want Jaden on Tyrese Maxey in that situation.
Yep. And Paul George is just flummoxed by Ant's physicality, like doesn't want to play basically at that point.
I've just been so focused on what Julius Randle is going to look like offensively, and just know that he's coming into a great defensive team that I haven't thought. But that's an important variable. Like, who's Randle guarding? How is he guarding? Is he effective at this? Does he fit within this context? I mean, fortunately, he played alongside a Mitchell Robinson last season, and everybody references that like, oh, like the New York's offense was fine, and he played next to Mitchell Robinson and threw him lobs or whatever. I think that's way more instructive is defensively. He played next to a true rim protector. The Mitchell Robinson is the Gobert archetype defensively too. But yeah, that's just another sort of curiosity I have. Why don't you tell people about what Conley Corner is? I mean, I know a lot of listeners know this from last season, I guess. How many seasons have you been doing this for?
It's just second year. Yep.
Second year. Okay.
Mike's second year here, second year of Conley's Corner. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you just pitch that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So it did it all of last season. Did it 1 week here, just ran on Sunday, but it's basically just like a 10 to 15 minute conversation with Mike about any topic that feels relevant at the time. Might be about Mike, might be about the NBA, like might be about the team, whatever. And just like getting his full thoughts on it, because like could literally be good on any topic. Like, and you could sit and listen to him talk about anything basketball related pretty much all day. And then I just kind of make a story out of it, but it really is just like everything Mike said, just kind of put in pieced together. And this last Sunday in Sunday's paper came on the line Saturday. It was just the idea of trades, like heading into that game against the Knicks, obviously off of that big trade. Like, what is it like being traded? What is it like when your teammates are traded? How do players view being traded? And like, because like, Tim Conley at that press conference, like, it's kind of a gross thing, like trading people, like basically treating them like assets.
Oh, true Tim line.
Yeah. Yep. And then and talking to Mike about that, and he's like, yeah, there's nothing good about it, but he talked about how there's a right way to do it and players do understand it. And like here were his two different experiences, very different experiences when he was traded from Memphis and then from Utah. And he talked about the differences in that. He talked about what players do, like how they react when like a teammate is traded, that kind of stuff. So it's topics like that. We'll definitely, like, half of them will be Mike related, like very closely tied to Mike, but there are like bigger, like broader issues like to touch on too. Usually like every 2 or 3 weeks, have those conversations and just get more insight from maybe like the most insightful player that I've ever covered.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, it's great. And I would just like also to listeners point out that this is unique in two ways. One, Mike has a very interesting perspective of having been in the league as long as he has, and he's just a very high IQ basketball player, very high IQ teammate, professional, whatever, which makes it
human being.
Yeah, for sure. But he also, like, credit to you, you guys have like a really good relationship, which what people might like, that really helps being able to get out better answers and better topics and stuff like this. I think it was for me, it was one of the probably the most informative like piece of Wolves content that I would read last season, because it is a one-on-one with just Jace, where normally like all the interviews like you and I are doing are together, it's a scrum and I'm standing next to you.
Right.
And,
so if you're reading my story or whatever, it's like maybe my kind of analysis on it, but you're like, yeah, but I've seen these people's thoughts on it.
I heard you transcribe those quotes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like from listening to your questions, I knew what the story was going to be and what was going to be said in it. Yeah.
Exactly. No. So I really love it. And I know, listeners as well as this season, Mike's going to have a lot of instruction on what this all looks like. And so at twincities.com or in the Pioneer Press, they do have a $1 for 6 months to sign up for. That's your guys' promotion, you got online that you have going on right now. It's 100% obviously that gets you Conley Corner, but that gets you all of Jace's writing throughout the season as well. So really do recommend that, particularly Conley Corner and the one that he wrote over this weekend. Let's do some prize picks, Jace.
Let's do it.
Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, and Jace is going to do Mondays with me this season, and we are going to pick from the slate of Monday night football games. While that's going on, I'm sure once football's done, we'll do some basketball and otherwise. But from the Monday game, for the Monday night game, what do you like?
I'll do one, you do one, and then back
Sure.
and forth.
All
okay. I'll start with under 36.5 receiving yards for Keon Coleman.
Ooh, that is kind of high.
Yeah, it's up at the top.
There we go. Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Mostly like, I mean, the Jets corners are fantastic. Josh Allen doesn't throw for 200 yards in games anymore, and I just assume like if you're gonna beat the Jets in the passing game, it's probably gonna be like in the slot. Maybe like a Curtis Samuel if he's playing. I don't even know if he is. He might not be. But whoever's in that spot, like I don't see like Keon Coleman. He might get like Sauce Gardner. I don't see him.
I think he is gonna get Sauce Gardner.
Yeah, like and that's not to say Keon Coleman can't break like a 45-yard catch and you lose, but I think the probability is just on your side in that one.
Right, and that's what this is. We're going, all right, it's 36.5 receiving yards. Is it more likely that he gets more than that, or more likely that he gets less than that? And, you're looking for the ones that you're confident that one way or the other. And I like that for that one. For me, I'm on, all right, Breece Hall is back, and I think a lot of times in fantasy and stuff, like we overreact to a couple of low weeks. And I'm going to just take Breece Hall for more than 14.5 fantasy points. It's full PPR on Prize Picks. So I like that one there. If you want to get like,
wait. So Breece Hall is back. Hey, Dane, could you inform listeners, who did you trade for in fantasy football last week?
I traded for Breece Hall, and I need him tonight. And I need him tonight. Yeah. So I am going to be hammering the elevated version of the, it's 79
I'd go a touchdown.
Yep, but whatever. I'm taking it. 14 and a half more there. Shut up. What is your other one?
I'm going receiving yards again, and I'm going under, and I don't feel as good about this one, but under on Braylon Allen, 10.5 receiving yards.
Okay.
And it's literally just because, and he actually goes over that a lot. Like if you click on his little graph thingy, like
Mhm.
it shows he goes over that, but he gets like one screen pass a game.
Mhm.
So it's just the probability that one of these screen passes is not going to go for 11 yards. Eventually something's going to be snuffed out.
Yeah.
He's just not a very big part of the receiving game, but it almost like catches the team by surprise when they do run a screen for him because you're just thinking run when he's in the game. I'm just going to say that one time is going to get stuff for under 10. And like you said, Breece Hall is back. So, like,
yeah, exactly.
it's not a Braylon Allen game. It's a Breece Hall game.
All right. My other one is Josh Allen for less than 34.5 rushing yards. That's just obviously Josh Allen is one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the league. But that is a high number for rushing yards for a quarterback. So I'm going to take less than 34.5 for him, just to kind of show listeners or people that are watching on YouTube. If you do, so we put all four of those together. If Keon Coleman gets less than 36.5 receiving yards, if Breece Hall gets more than 14.5 fantasy points, if Braylon Allen gets less than 10.5 receiving yards, and Josh Allen gets less than 34.5 rushing yards, if all four of those things hit, you get 10 to I have 20 in here right now. So if you were to put 20 on that, you would get 200 there. They have also like flex plays where it lowers your odds if you get all four correct, but if you only get 3 of the 4 correct, you get 1.25 of your money. There's just a bunch of different ways to kind of do it. I think these are particularly fun to do honestly on Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football when I do have Breece Hall in fantasy, so I have that reason to watch. But it's a good, and you don't got to do $20, do $5, $5 to
right.
50. It's fun.
There are a million ways to play it too. Like I was just like tinkering around on it because you're like, hey, find 2. So I would just go into like the touchdown one, like to score a touchdown, like, and I just like clicked on like what is it for Josh Allen and Braylon Allen to both like score a touchdown, and it was like 7.5 to 1. Like that's fun to do that. Like okay, one player on each team to score. And
I do think those are the fun ones where it's the elevate. So they got the little demon
7 to 1
like
now.
Elevated. That's sweet. It's like
and
if you lose $5, you lose $5.
If Josh Allen scores in the first quarter and the rest of the game, you're just living and dying on Braylon Allen to score a touchdown. Like that is fun.
Love it. Yeah, exactly. You're not gonna hit those all the time.
Correct.
But,
if you hit it 1 out of 7, though, you came out even.
Exactly.
And if you lose it with $5, you lost 35 over 7 weeks or whatever. Like,
I know that's it.
Game.
As always, do it responsibly. But it is. I think it's it's like going. I always refer to it like when you go to the bar to watch a Vikings game like with your friends and you're gonna buy some beers. You're gonna spend $20 on beers and that's gonna go away. There's no shit. It's kind of like that, a little entertainment tax. But I think it's fun to do. That's PrizePicks.com or the PrizePicks app. If you do not have an account and you use the promo code Dane when you sign up and you do submit a $5 lineup, they will instantly credit you with $50 into your account. So that gives you a lot more chances to do $5 shots at this thing. But we appreciate PrizePicks and we'd love you to play this season. They got a bunch of NBA ones, season long ones coming up too. I think Kyle and I are going to do that later this week. But do we have anything else Wolves related, Jace?
I don't think so, man. They're just in the middle of their preseason road trip and then they're home Thursday. I would just say like for Thursday, not encouraging people to not go or something, but just like, no, like I think there's a pretty good chance that home game against the Nuggets now with it being the second half of a back-to-back is probably not a heavy starter minutes if we even see starters in that game, just because they will have played the night before in Chicago. It's just kind of a heads up.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It is a preseason back-to-back now. Yeah. But I do think the Chicago game on Wednesday, hopefully again we get Randle in that one
and we expect
another,
to. Yeah,
because that's what should say that when Jason and I were in Iowa, I asked Finch about that. Like, is there any risk that Julius isn't going to be back for the regular season? And he said no. Like he's going to play on this road trip. which would have meant New York
There's
or
one game
Chicago.
left.
So,
Yeah.
At least that's what their feeling was. I don't want to promise that he's going to be back, but that's what Finch said.
It's our anticipation.
When we were in Iowa. Well, man, this is awesome. We'll do it again on next Monday. And again, for those of you listening, do check out Conley Corner and all of Jace's writing at twincities.com or in the Pioneer Press. You can follow Jace on Twitter at Jace Frederick. Coming up next is going to be Britt and I are going to do an episode on Thursday morning after the game in Chicago. No Chris this week. He's still on the road and going to be traveling on Wednesday when we would normally be doing an episode. But we'll do Britt on Thursday, Kyle on Friday, and then Wolves Fest, Britt and I next Saturday. So that's what's coming up on the show, and Wolves Fest will be recorded and up on the YouTube channel and in your podcast feed as well. But yeah, until then, until what is that? Thursday with Britt. He's Jace. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let